Welcome. Hello? Hello? Is it time to go? Check. Cut. Is it time to go? Are we good? Right on. Anyways, hello. My name is Chris Shelton from mostly rainy San Jose, California, the heart of Silicon Valley. And today, what I'm doing is I'm continuing the discussion about food. Food as fuel, fuel for your body. But in particular, what we're talking about is the five flavors of food. A lot of people don't realize that there's different flavors, there's different colors that represent different internal organs of the body. And if you're deficient in something, then it's actually probably pretty good to eat, or if you know you're deficient in something or weak in something, then it's actually pretty good to know what colors or what foods to eat in order to help to build those foods up or to build that part of your body up again. So generally speaking, when we're looking at the five element is such a foreign language, but we're really talking about, in this case here, the five flavors of food and the five main organs of the body. So your five main organs are your heart, your liver, your lungs, your spleen, and your kidneys. Now they all work with other internal organs. So for example, your heart works with the small intestine, also works with the pericardium and what is known as the triple warmer or triple burner, which is actually not a physiological organ, but is more of a function of the three main areas of the body. The upper burner is here, the middle burner, and then the lower burner. And then we have the large intestine that works with the lungs. We have the bladder that works with the kidneys. We have the gallbladder that works with the liver. And then we have the stomach and spleen that work also with the pancreas. So what are the flavors according to those five organs? Actually, we talk about the five flavors. There's five organs that we're talking about. We talk about five flavors, but there's actually seven flavors. So for the spleen, foods that are sweet in nature or are bland would be foods that would be eaten in order to benefit your spleen and your pancreas and your stomach. Foods that are pungent in nature actually help to work with your lungs. And then foods that are sour in nature and or astringent in nature actually help to work with your liver and your gallbladder. And then foods that are bitter actually help to work with the heart. And then foods that are salty actually help to work with the kidneys. So what kind of foods are these? Well, and what do they do? So what do bitter foods do? Well, what bitter foods do is they help to disperse. They actually help to clear. So sometimes with certain colds and flus, believe it or not, you would actually eat bitter foods. You guys actually eat pungent foods also. But bitter helps to disperse things. So if you have a chronic cough, for example, or if you have edema, then what it does is that it helps to disperse that. Or chronic pain as well too. So it helps to invigorate movement as well. And so if you have chronic pain, whether it's menstrual pain or localized pain, you can actually eat bitter foods like kale, rhubarb, and apricot kernel in order to help to satisfy those types of dysfunctions. Things that are sour, foods that are sour actually help to invigorate and move chi and blood, and helps to consolidate. So if you have, and helps to pull things back in again. So for example, if you have seminal emissions, no pun from the peanut gallery back there, I see you guys smiling. Seminal emissions, any type of body fluid discharge, you could actually use like chronic diarrhea, for example. You could actually eat sour or astringent foods to help to stop the diarrhea or stop the discharge inside the body. Pungent foods. So what do pungent foods do? Going back to the sour, then the sour astringent foods would be things like Chinese sour plum. It would be kale. Those are the types of things. It also would be things like lemon and vinegar would also be things would be considered sour. So foods that are salty in nature, then they have to break up masses. So whether it's tumors or hard nodules inside the body. So the salty flavor benefits the kidneys, but it actually helps to lubricate as well too. So lubricate, what does that mean? So if you're somebody who has constipation, then actually having a glass of salt water with Himalayan sea salt can actually help to lubricate the intestines to help you have a healthier evacuation. But yeah, so the salty foods can help to break up nodules. And what are the foods that are in the salty category? Well, foods that would be like sea salt, for example, but not in excess. seaweed, which is really good for goiters, by the way. Saltwater fish, but not fish that are too big, because fish that are too big swim around the water, and they actually collect the mercury from the water. So you don't want the fish. Actually, having cans of sardines. Those sardines are packed with omegas and packed with protein and are so good for you. And anyways, that salty flavor helps to break down nodules. And I think I said pungent, but going back to pungent again. So pungent actually helps to circulate qi, helps to move qi, and helps also disperse as well too. So when we have a cold or any type of pathogen inside the body, cold or a virus, what pungent foods do is they actually help to push it out. They also help to open up the pores. And so some of the foods that would be pungent would be mint, cinnamon, onions, garlic, leeks. Those are or turnips. And by the way, turnips are probably one of my favorites because they're if you have a lung infection, especially, they're antibacterial and antifungal. So these are flavors that actually benefit the lungs. And so they actually help to disperse phlegm. They help to invigorate the movement of blood. They induce sweating as well too. So if you're somebody who's suffering from edema and you need to sweat to get the water moving, then actually having pungent foods may help with this. Now, sweet foods, they're really great because, and they're not sugary sweet. Unfortunately, in our culture here in the West, when we are craving something sweet, that's the body's way of talking to us and saying that, you know what, we need something naturally sweet. But what we end up going for is actually sugar, or candy or carbs or those types of things, which creates more of a weakness inside the body. So sweet foods, naturally sweet foods like yams, sweet potatoes, gourds, oatmeal, those types of things, porridge, actually help to strengthen the body. And if you're somebody who's emancipated, who's somebody who is coming back, let's say you're coming back from a battle with cancer and chemo, having something like like having a congee or a rice porridge is really good to strengthen the stomach and spleen. Why? Because that bland/sweet flavor actually helps to benefit the stomach and spleen and actually helps to strengthen it. So that sweet flavor too, it really is really good also for strengthening and decelerating. So what do I mean by decelerating? Decelerating means if you have a chronic pain somewhere inside the body, having these naturally sweet foods could actually help to slow that down and help to slow and relieve some of that pain. The other thing that the sweet foods do, the naturally sweet foods, is because we could have weakness when we're talking about deficiencies from the spleen and stomach. It could be qi, it could be our blood, it could be yin and yang inside the body, or it could be organ weaknesses as well. So actually having something naturally sweet inside the body or eating foods that are sweet can actually help to strengthen certain organs as well too. I'll give you an example. A prolapse is when the organs actually fall out of place. And that spleen of ours, for which for many years, they were just taking them out thinking, oh, we don't need that spleen. Now I'm reading medical reports that are saying, wow, we shouldn't have been taking out all those spleens all those years. But anyways, if you have a prolapse of the uterus, the only way to treat it in Western medicine is to have a hysterectomy. Unfortunately, that's not the way to go. If you have a prolapse of the bladder, so a lot of people don't realize this, but your organs actually are held in place because one of the main functions of the spleen is to hold things. And so if you do have a prolapse of the bladder, organs are falling out of place. Look at your diet. Look at what you're eating. Are you eating too many carbs and pastas and breads and too many cold and raw foods, things that injure the stomach? Are you eating too much sugar? Are you worrying too much? Are you stuck in your head too much? Are you over intellectualizing too much? Because all of these things actually will help to or will contribute to the prolapse. And doing simple practices like Qigong and looking at the energetic properties of foods can actually help you change the course of disease. And something like a prolapse, which you have a hysterectomy, you're not quite the same after that. I think that creates a lot of other problems and is totally unnecessary. Or having surgery for a bladder, falling bladder, or even hemorrhoids, for example, would be an example of excess dampness inside the body. So how do we squash excess dampness? And the way that we squash it is then we can have more bitter foods, foods that relate to the heart, or we can have more sour foods that relate to the liver to squash dampness. So when the spleen and stomach get out of balance, dampness would be anything like fibroids, tumors, cancers, phlegm, any type of phlegm inside the body, whether it's phlegm that's in the lungs or in the sinuses, or phlegm that's actually in the joints of the body. Yeah, we actually, what we would do is, yes, we could tonify or we could build up the spleen by having more naturally sweet foods, but actually we want foods that are going to help to disperse it, and that's where the bitter foods would come into play. Okay, so just going back really quickly, just to review. So the 5 organs of the body, your heart is governed, or the food that benefits the heart are foods that are bitter in nature. Foods that are red in nature also, or pink, would also help to benefit the heart. So for example, during the summer months, the heart is most prone to disease. And if you pay attention, then during that time of year, what do you see? We start to see more watermelon, we start to see more cherries. And the reason why is because those foods actually help to cool the heart down. Asparagus, artichokes are also slightly bitter in nature, which are also found mostly in the summer months, and those vegetables also help to cool the heart's energy down. So, but any kind of food that's red, tomatoes, like slightly baking a tomato, for example, even like things like eggplant as well too, will actually help to benefit the heart. Now, for the liver, foods that are green in nature and foods that are sour in nature, like I talked about, like lemon, vinegar, those types of things, Chinese sour plum, are all foods that actually help to benefit the liver. And foods that are green, so you're hearing all this talk about celery juice, kale, any of your green leafy vegetables, broccoli, those types of things actually will help to benefit the liver. And you could have a cup of hot glass of hot water with lime or lemon juice in the morning, but it's actually a little bit more beneficial if you actually have the lime as opposed to the lemon, just because of the color associated with that internal organ. Now, the lungs and the large intestine, the foods that are white in nature, generally speaking, though cinnamon's not white, it's brown, it has this pungent flavor, and the pungent flavor helps to invigorate the movement of qi, helps to move things along, and helps to move fluids and disperse. And so, like I said, onions, garlic, leeks, turnips are really good. And these types of foods, these pungent foods, actually benefit the lung network. Let's see, am I missing one? Then going back to the salty foods. So salty foods are connected to the kidneys, and the kidneys, the color foods that are colors of blue and or purple or black actually will have to benefit the kidneys. So if you like black beans, like I said, if you like seaweed, I think seaweed, having a little package of seaweed a day, cooking with kelp granules. So you go online, you can actually order kelp granules online, and mixing that in with your food. Believe it or not, it's not too overpowering. Like I put kelp granules in my eggs in the morning, and it's not too overpowering. Helps to benefit the kidney network, but you know what else it does for you too is it actually helps to benefit your thyroid. So if you're somebody with thyroid issues, which is actually an extension of the liver kidney network being out of function, then having those kelp granules that can actually help to help your issues with thyroids. And then going back once again with the sweet flavors. The sweet flavors are bland or neutral flavors, benefit the stomach and spleen. So fruits and vegetables that are yellow and orange actually benefit the stomach and spleen. And so if you pay attention to the different season and what's in season at your local farmer's market, that's what you should be eating. I started off, for example, with the summer months. So foods that are bitter in nature, cooling in nature, because that's when the heart's most prone to disease. The Indian summer months, that's a transitional months. That's where dampness tends to form, and then foods like yam, sweet potato, pumpkin. Those pumpkins, by the way, yes, they're really groovy to have for Halloween or to have pumpkin pie, but those pumpkins are really good to eat because they are there on purpose, because your stomach and spleen are most prone to disease. And one of the things I love is pumpkin curry. Oh my goodness gracious, that is so delicious. But I don't know if all the coconut stuff is just as good for you, but pumpkin curry is fantastic with a little bit of tofu is awesome. Anyways, the pumpkin is really good for nurturing your spleen and stomach. And because during the Indian summer months, around September, October-ish, then that's when those organs are most prone to disease. And like I talked about last week about seasonal allergies with the liver, if you are somebody who tends to get seasonal allergies in the Indian summer months, then that's normally a sign that there's a dysfunction actually in your digestive system. Pungent foods. So during the fall time is when the lungs are most prone to disease, and all these organs have certain weather climatic conditions that they don't like, and I'll get into that here in a second. But anyways, in the fall months, your lungs are most prone to disease, so that's why you want to eat. You want to eat the fennel, you want to eat the turnips and those types of things, and the onions. And then going into the winter months, and that's where our kidneys are most prone to disease. So the winter months. So, and starting off with the kidneys, so the kidneys are also affected by cold. So different foods or different climatic conditions externally, guess what? We could actually have them internally too. So for example, we could have external cold, which injures the kidneys, but we could actually have coldness inside the body. Going to to springtime, the liver doesn't like wind, and you could have internal wind, and it's not just somebody coming up to you and saying, "Hey, let me pull your finger," but it's really conditions like facial neuralgia, which I talked about last week, the little eye twitch, pain that moves around the body. We call it a bi syndrome. That's wind. So just like external wind, you can actually have internal wind inside the body, and the liver does not like wind. And if you notice during the spring months, then it tends to be windier. At least here it tends to be windier in the spring months. And then summer, the heart does not like heat, summer heat. And so somebody asked a question. We did a post on Instagram yesterday about lettuce, and they brought up the question about, well, Chris, I've read so much in Chinese medicine nutrition or Chinese nutrition about how not to eat cold and raw and things like lettuce. But there are actually some healing properties to lettuce, and especially in the summer months when it is hot, what you want to do is you want to keep the summer heat from creating too much heat inside the body, which can contribute to heart disease. And actually there's most of the heart attacks actually happen during the summer months. So lettuce can be good, but pay attention to what your constitution is, and also what's also going on with you disease-wise. But it's not that lettuce is bad, it's just that when people are eating it, especially in the winter months, when it's cold outside, or if it's cold outside, it can actually create problems for you later on. So we have summer heat. So summer heat, it creates higher risk for heart disease and heart attacks. The Indian summer months, dampness. So we talked about the dampness. The spleen and stomach don't like dampness. Other things that will create dampness too is the foods that's where the breads, the pastas, too much alcohol will create dampness inside the body. Too much wine will create dampness inside the body. And then what happens when things are damp? They become heavy. If you think about a cloth, for example, cloth is relatively light. As soon as you apply water to it, then that cloth becomes really heavy. Well, it might be happy, but it actually becomes very heavy. So that kind of dampness you actually have inside the body. So things like cancers, tumors, fibroids, certain types of arthritis, chronic phlegm inside the body are all forms of dampness accumulating. Sometimes some of the abdominal or swelling that we get in the abdomen can also be dampness as well too. And then last but not least, when we're looking at the climatic condition that affects the lungs are affected by the climatic condition of dryness. The lungs do not like to be dry. As a matter of fact, what happens is that when we breathe, as we inhale, then the kidneys actually have to grab the air, pull the air all the way down to the kidneys. Then as we exhale, then what happens is that then the moisture from the kidneys then moistens the lungs. And one of the things that the lungs are responsible for is opening and closing the pores on the skin and regulating the water passageways between the muscles and the skin. And so therefore, the skin is nice and moist. So the lungs don't like dryness, and you can actually have internal dryness inside the body. So, also your cooking method too. if you know you're somebody that is suffering from some kind of damp condition, again, going back to hemorrhoids or going back to prolapses, going back to cancers, those types, then you want to use a drying cooking method, which is baking, broiling, barbecuing, those types of things, okay? If you're somebody who has excessive dryness, dry skin, then also your cooking method, then what you want to do is just the opposite, is that you want to have things that are moist. You want to do moistening cooking methods, which would be like steaming and braising and boiling. So those are some examples of things you could do if you know you have too much dryness inside the body. So for example, let's say you have a dry, unproductive cough. Well, that unproductive cough could actually be too much grief in the lungs, or sadness or sorrow that's been repressed in the lungs. It could be repressed grief or sadness, but actually there could be this internal dryness that's come about, maybe because of poor diet, poor lifestyle habit. And so the cooking method of braising, boiling, or steaming, sauteing could actually help to offset the internal dryness inside the body. If you're somebody who tends to run hot, well, obviously you don't want to be barbecuing. You don't want to be broiling your stuff. You want to probably moisten, slow cook it, and have things at room temperature. If you're somebody who has cold inside the body, then what you want to do is then you want to heat yourself up. So then cooking methods that would actually help to increase more heat, then that's where you would actually do just the opposite. You actually would probably barbecue more or bake more or broil more in order to increase that. So really listen to your body, because these internal organs, what's really interesting is that the internal organs are connected to the seasons, they're connected to the emotions, they're connected to the flavors of food, they're connected to the directions. And when you pay attention to your body, then what will happen is you kind of get to know what you need. And the most important thing is know what your constitution is, know what you're how your health is, and what it is that you're going through. Pay attention to the seasons, whatever's going on with the seasons. Eat what's in season, and really be mindful as to what you are eating. So just to wrap it up here really quickly, again, your heart likes foods that are bitter in nature. Your liver loves foods that are sour in nature. Your kidneys like foods that are salty in nature. Your spleen likes foods that are bland or sweet in nature, and then your lungs like foods that are pungent in nature. And when we say eat these things in moderation. For example, like salty foods, you don't want to go crazy with having salt, because you could obviously increase the chances for hypertension and heart disease. So be mindful, but having, for example, 1 glass of hot water in the morning with a full lemon or full lime is good, but drinking pure lime juice throughout the day is probably not so good. So don't go to the extremes, because sometimes I make these recommendations. Oh, add more sour to your diet. Next thing you know, people are drinking these big bottles of pure lime juice and they're having acid reflux, and they're wondering why in the heck am I having acid reflux for? Well, everything's a balance. So with that said, I'm Chris Shelton from rainy San Jose, California. Until next time, eat well, be happy, and say la chi.